Beyond recording studios, musicians turned business moguls. For generations, Black musicians have shaped American culture and entertainment, yet many have struggled to profit from their talent alone. So, the point of the article is that Black musicians have to move beyond the traditional music industry to find a way to make some money. So, of course, because you know what I mean, this is just this is the level and lane I'm in. I'm not going to be the keynote. I'm not going to be the main one. I'm not going to be the headline scholar interviewed. You got to go when you can reach him. You got to go get the big dogs. And so she went and reached out to Mark Anthony Neal, who said it's very difficult for artists to actually make money selling music. They've always had to do other things too, said Mark Anthony Neal, an author and African American studies professor at Duke University and host of Left of Black, that is quite happy to talk around and dismissively about your boy, but not invite me on to have a conversation. It's this odd. It's odd. We've paneled together, sat in person next to one another, and had a cordial time of it. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? But if folks remember that wonderful discussion with Professor Aria Halliday, where they were pew 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 taking shots. But all right, you know what I'm saying? But so I'm just adding that to his bio there. You know. He goes on, historically, it was taking your act on the road because artists make more money touring than selling records. Now it's become establishing a brand as a musician and expanding that brand to cover your business interests in order to make a living. And that's right, that 360 deal. They get you with that 360 deal. You can't just go on the road anymore. So he's quoted here as, and I wondered what the full discussion was like, because the way he's that is Anthony Neal is just described, summarized here, is talking about these examples from the 30s and the late 50s of Thomas Dorsey and Sam Cooke as being somewhat moguls in the industry is interesting and somewhat, I think, a little bit falsely nostalgic. This idea that the father of gospel music was doing something kind of independent back in the day, and that Sam Cooke was somehow successful in starting his own publishing company, which some have argued was behind why he got himself killed. But again, it almost comes across like Anthony Neal is suggesting that it was like, again, it was all good just a week ago, and then things went bad when I definitely disagree with him when he's quoted here as saying that it's changing, with that it's even getting better. Like, okay, here he says, because they've seen so many stories of Black artists who, for whatever reason, weren't savvy enough on the business side and found themselves in their 50s and 60s unable to make a living and sustain themselves. There's a younger generation of artists that've been so much more savvy, particularly with hip hop, said Neal. I think every artist who gets involved in the business is very conscious that they can't simply make a living by selling records or streaming music. Yeah, but so this, I definitely disagreed with this here. So first of all, again, I don't know how the full conversation went, and I know they often don't, get reported accurately. But as he's reported speaking here, this idea that Black musicians or anyone else are broke because they're not savvy with their business is, I think, unfair, because again, it puts it into a situation as if it's back into that description, as though people are poor because of their own decision making, and that there were actual options for them, and that we're, in other words, we don't see many examples of people who start their career off making great deals for themselves and having magical celebrity driven careers. That's not how it works. We even end up seeing the biggest celebrities having to fight tooth and nail, Prince, Michael Jackson, even Taylor Swift, for control over their art. And they're at the tippity top. And in cases like Prince, after they've already ascended to the highest of heights of the industry. So you're not going to come in with some level of business savvy, and I guess we could wait and see generationally how hip hoppers of today fare. But this idea that we're about to see a whole bunch of retirees chilling, when again, as we're going to get to in my point, that there is no safety net for them. I don't know. So I don't you know, and an artist may be more aware today than before that they have to do more than sell records to make music. I don't know that that's true. I think again, as even Neal points out in his own previous comment, artists have always understood that they would have to go on tour beyond selling records to make money. So now artists know that they have to go on to podcasts and sell products and you know become liquor brands and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, only a handful of them do well, and only a handful of them have sustained careers. So I don't. Now we get to the good part. Oh wait, no. First, we just see the picture. We got a little bit more of Neal here. Artists have to be savvy enough to know how to control the narrative of what is from the wellspring of Black cultural production, as opposed to what is just being bought and sold. Said Neal. Too many people now, including some young artists, treat Black culture as a commodity. They have to think it through. That because once it becomes commercial, it also becomes disposable. So again, as more musicians find success in the business world, Neal cautioned that artists should not reduce the culture they create to a mere commercial product. I mean, you can't, you can't, there is no not doing that though. There is no not doing that if you're going to have a commercial career. There is no not reducing it to commodity. There is no protecting the culture. Though the growing trend of musicians becoming business moguls may be seen as progress, some see it as a response to deeper structural problems within the industry. The reason Black musicians look to expand into other areas of business is because they have already been exploited and thoroughly limited within the highly monopolized and politicized environments of the music industry, said Jared Ball, professor of communication and Africana studies at Morgan State University. Then they go off and try to make up for it by extending their brand and making as much as they can off of it. So I do remember that was one of the points I was trying to make, that of course they're trying to go in other areas because they've already been exploited. They can't make any more money in the music industry, so they have to go somewhere else. Like it's not, what I was really trying to convey was it's not like there's this new level of genius that today's artists are have attained. It is just a continuation of what has always been the case. But Ball warned that even as Black artists branch out into business to gain more control over their careers and earnings, they often find themselves running up against the same structural barriers that limited them in the music industry. I'm glad she included that. He advocated for redistributing the profits of the music industry to better compensate the artists who create its value. This could include providing musicians with unions, healthcare, and retirement benefits. Sort of what I was saying. Obviously you're not provided with a union, but that you create that they should be provided with but artists should unionize is what I was saying. But definitely there should be healthcare and retirement benefits. Even down to the so-called one-hit wonder, these artists are helping to produce billions of dollars for what is ultimately 2 to 3 companies on the ownership side of the music industry and 2 to 3 companies on the distribution side, said Ball. Instead of worrying about each individual, we should be advocating that labor be unionized, organized, and better paid, protected, and respected for the wealth that it produces.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.